So this is a tutorial for installing an IDE and compiler for C and eventually C++, but we'll focus on C on macOS. There will be another separate tutorial for Windows. So we have two options. We're going to look at first an IDE similar to the one you've been using for Java. So this the IDE option should be more comfortable if you're used to using NetBeans or Eclipse for Java. And then we'll look at the compiler option that is also interesting in some respects. So I suggest the Eclipse IDE. So if you type just in Google Eclipse CPP 2021 or just Eclipse IDE C++, that should work too. It's going to take you to Eclipse IDE for C, C++ developers. There are several versions. This take you usually via Google to an older one, so then it gets you a link to a more recent one. Here, Eclipse IDE for C++ developers. It has the same title every time. I think all of them will work, so the version doesn't really matter too much. So you're going to download in this case the macOS file, and for Windows it's going to be the Windows file, and we're going to install Eclipse. So Eclipse is an IDE that that is mostly made for Java, but it has many what we call perspectives, where it switches to other system of debugging and compiling depending on which perspective you use. This one directly installs the C++ perspective, so you don't have to mess with that. But if you already have Eclipse and you're familiar with it, you can just install on, it's like an add-on, the C++ perspective. So okay, so our file is here. I'm going to open the DMG file, and it's going to take a minute, okay, a few seconds. Then there is Eclipse. We slide it to applications like you would do for any application on Mac. And now we can open Eclipse IDE. Hopefully it's going to open the right one, because I used to have, just going to try to not mess up with any space. I'm creating a new workspace just to have something completely clean. Java project. So that was the wrong Eclipse. Sorry about that. There's always a little bit of issue sometimes. So I'm just going to go to application and make sure I'm opening the right one, Eclipse. Because I already had it. So yeah, so that's the right one, because it should say, are you sure you want to open it? It's the application we just installed. So this time it should work fine. And I'm launching on a new workspace. So the name of the workspace, you just say okay, doesn't matter. And you have here create a new C project, so you can just go straight there. Now if you're yeah, you can just go straight there. I'll go back to the perspective thing later. And then we're going to go back to that for C++, but right now we're just going to look at C. You can select C, manage to build. There are other options, but we're just going to look at that one for now. And then you can give your project hello CS 390. Empty project, or in this case I'm going to choose a hello world C project. I think it's good to at least have something to start with. It's always more comfortable. And then I usually pick the macOS GCC because I know it works well, but they both should work. And then you can go to next. You can put an author if you want, finish, and there we go. We have here the name of the file. Okay, so there's different tabs here in Eclipse with different file names if you have a project with multiple files, but in this case, in the case of this assignment, should be just one file. And then we have all the files here. So the thing is that if you try to run it, local container would be if you use a Docker file, but in this case, it's going to be local. If you try to run as local C, C++ application here, it's going to tell you launch failed, binary not found. So that's something particular about C compared to Java is that this language is not interpreted, it's compiled. So it first goes through a compiling phase to transform to get a binary file, which is basically machine language, and then you can execute that file. So it's always a two-step process. So first we need to build the project. So you can just go into build project, and it's going to create some binaries here. You have them with the hello CS 390. So now if I try to execute it, so if I go here, I right click and run as local C, C++ application, I get my hello world, okay? Now, what's interesting with this IDE is that usually we're gonna see the other option when you actually use a compiler. You actually have to do the two-step process every time. You have to build, and then here it's going to automatically build when you make a change. So if I do hello, instead of hello world, hello CS390 class, then I do not have to rebuild again. It automatically does compile the file. So if I launch in run mode again, I should have hello CS390 class. The update is automatic, okay? So this is the file you can work on, and then really all you have to submit in the end is just your .c file. That's your entire project in some sense, right? So it's not like a Java project where you should do a file export into a zip, to have all the files to make sure you have all the right dependencies. In the case of C, everything is in the .c file. So really, ultimately, what you are going to submit is just the .c file you have here. Okay, and when you submit the .c file, you won't have these sub libraries. They won't be. I mean, this is just a feature of the IDE. Okay, and you can find the file in the workspace you worked with. So either you can do show in, while it doesn't necessarily include, but in properties you should be able to see, yes, the location here. So you have the file path here, the path file here, sorry, to retrieve the file. Okay, so that's one option. Now I'm going to show you the other option, which I personally prefer, using the terminal. So you need for that to install Homebrew. I'm not going to do it live here because it takes a long time to install, but you can type Homebrew, Homebrew and brew.sh, and here you just have to copy. You can just copy this command line and paste it here, and just press enter. I'm not going to do it because it takes a while. And that's it. You will have Homebrew on your Mac. Homebrew is a very powerful application that works with the terminal to install a lot of things that you cannot just install using the Apple Store. Okay, the App Store. Not the Apple Store, the App Store. Okay, so once you have that, you can do a little brew update. And brew upgrade to make sure everything is up to date. I'm not going to do it again because it also takes quite some time here. And then you are going to use brew to install GCC. The command line, just to check what GCC is, to make sure to know more about what you would install, is brew info GCC, and then to install GCC you have to do brew install GCC, and it's going to install basically the C compiler on your Mac. Okay, it's already installed on my machine, so it didn't do much here because it's already installed. But that's the command you need to type if it was not installed. If you want to retrieve that page, again, you know, you just type install GCC on a Mac. In Google, I'm pretty sure it's going to take it right there, right? How does one install GCC on a Mac? Okay, and you have here the command lines. You might have a message that says you need to install Xcode. So if you have not done that, you might want, and it might be the case also when you, because I have a bunch of things installed on my machine, so I'm not completely sure that I cover everything you need ahead of doing that. So you might also have to install Xcode, which you probably already have, but if you don't, you can install it. Actually, this is something you can really find in the App Store, just typing Xcode, Xcode. Okay, so we have installed GCC. They suggest to do a brew cleanup just to save some space, but that's not necessary. But it removes a lot of files that are not being used. Okay, and so once you have done that, it's actually pretty simple to use. It's just a GCC command. Okay, I guess if you do GCC help, it will GCC help, it will give you some instruction about how to use it, but I'm going to show you. It's very simple. So I'm going to go to my dev folder, and then within dev my C folder, and my C folder, I don't remember how to open. Maybe it's open that. There you go. My C folder, I'm going to delete that. Contains just a hello.c file. Okay, so you just start a new text file or something, right? And I just copied the hello world program we just saw. Exactly the same. Okay, so hello world. It's really the same as I closed my Eclipse window, but it's really exactly the same file. So I just did a copy paste on a new .c file. To do a .c file, you can just start I use Sublime Text. I find it very convenient because it automatically does the syntax, analyze the file with the C syntax, and then you just save as a .c file. That's it. But you can use any text editor. That would work fine. And so I have my hello.c. It's saved, and now all I need to do here, I need to make sure I'm in the right folder. Of course, I'm in the C folder. Okay, I'm just going to do GCC hello.c, and that's it. And it's going to compile. Now it's going to create here a.out. It's going to compile to create a a.out file. Okay, and so now I need to execute this a.out. So the way I do it is /a.out. Okay, it's a little special command, and it just writes hello world. Okay, now it's important to notice that if I change here hello world to CS390, save, right, and I execute a.out, of course it's still going to write hello world, right? It's not like with the IDE where it's automatically recompiled. Here I need to do the two-step process again. So I need to do GCC hello.c. It's compiled. It compiled it, so I see that there's no error, no warning. And then I do the a.out, and now I see hello CS390. Okay, so I think I like this because it's very fast, and I find it I'm just used to work with that. I also like the way it shows errors and warnings if you have any problems. So, for instance, if I misspell return, okay, I just write it like that, and I try to compile, it's gonna show that there is one error generated, right? And it doesn't compile. So if I delete my a.out here, right, and I try to compile, it didn't create the a.out because it didn't compile. As long as you have errors, it won't compile, right? If you have no error, just warnings, it will compile fine. So I don't know exactly how to generate a warning, but you'll see on the I don't have any warning in mind maybe if I put like f1 greater than 0. Okay, so it doesn't like this then, of course. And then so it creates an error. Now it compiles, but I didn't create any warning. It didn't say that this is a line that can never be accessed. So it's not going to give you as many information, and it's same thing for the IDE actually as Java. Okay, you're not going to have as many warnings and feedback as you would have with Java. So it's a bit more challenging in this respect, right? And of course, there's a lot of things you can mess up with the memory allocation and everything. So that's part of the joys of C. So I hope this tutorial was helpful to get started, and I'll make sure I do the same one for Windows.